Mankind likes to believe that there are no monsters, that we have always ruled the world. It is not so. Henry was a disobedient little shit. He knew that. His dad said it often enough. His dad said a lot of things. Most of those things weren't very nice. Henry deserved it. His mom was always warning him to be quiet, but Henry kept forgetting. He was 9. He should know better by now. Everything would be so much better if Henry had not been born. "Well, did you see him again?" asked Matthew. Matthew was Henry's friend, sort of. He lived in the apartment downstairs. Matthew's folks didn't hate him the way Henry's did, but they were usually high. Matthew wandered around outside a lot. Henry usually ended up wandering around with him. Yeah, Henry was not as excited as Matthew. Matthew only half believed in the boogeyman, and the half that did believe was thrilled by the idea. Henry believed completely. There was nothing thrilling about it. Yeah, I saw. Well, what did he do? Matthew's eyes shined with excitement. They were in the hallway by Matthew's place. The hallway was ratty and run down, just like the rest of the building. The floor was covered in gray carpet. The carpet was old and stained and fraying along the edges. The place had a musty smell. Henry would have liked to go outside, but Matthew didn't have a coat. Henry had taken one from another kid for him, but the thing was too small. It was bullcrap. Henry could be out playing in the snow, but instead he was stuck in some stuffy hallway. Instead of telling Matthew what happened, Henry lifted up his shirt. He did it carefully. There was no reason to show Matthew the bruises. Henry just lifted his shirt enough to show the bite mark on his side. It hadn't scabbed over very well. The bite would start bleeding again if Henry stretched too far. The bite was not from a dog or a person. It looked a little like a people bite, but wider. A lot wider. Deeper, too. Sharp teeth had torn into Henry. They'd clamped down enough to lift him off the bed. It had hurt a lot. It still hurt a little. Whoa! Matthew leaned closer, staring at the wound. That's cool! He tried to poke it with a finger. Henry slapped his hand away and punched him in the arm. That's so cool! It's not cool, Henry informed him. It hurts. It's cool, Matthew argued. Look at it. It's not cool, Henry repeated. The boy thought about punching his friend again. No, he'd better not. The last time he beat up Matthew, the kid hadn't talked to him for 2 weeks. Matthew was dumb and annoying, but he was the only friend Henry had. Not that he'd ever tell him that out loud. It is cool, Matthew insisted. The boogeyman is real, and he bit you. He grinned. Wait till the guys at school hear about this. We're not telling anybody, remember? Henry reminded him. It's a secret. Yeah. Matthew waved the warning away. I won't tell anyone, I guess. Henry scowled. He'd told the kid over and over to keep the boogeyman stuff between the two of them, but Matthew never listened. He'd run his mouth again on Monday and everyone would laugh at him. Henry would beat up anyone that hit the kid, but he wasn't going to do anything about making fun. Heck, he might make fun of Matthew himself, dummy. So what are you going to do? Matthew asked. What? Henry frowned at the other boy. What are you going to do about the boogeyman? Matthew explained. He bit you. You should tell your mom. Tell Mom? Henry tried that already. She doesn't believe me, he said solemnly. You should show her the bite, Matthew pressed. It did show her, Henry informed the kid. She doesn't believe me. His mom had gotten a funny look on her face. Then she scolded him for lying and warned him about playing with stray dogs. Then she left for work. She'd be no help at all. She doesn't believe me. Henry shook his head. He shouldn't have expected anything else. Mom never listened. She definitely never protected him. Oh, Matthew scratched his head. Maybe you could tell your dad? Henry punched Matthew on the arm again. Ow, Matthew complained. Don't you get it? Henry demanded. Grown-ups don't listen to kids. They don't care. Think about it. How many kids have you watched me beat up? Half the time the playground aid's right there, but they never do anything. Grown-ups don't help. They never help. Matthew thought about that for a minute. He shrugged. I guess so. Henry sighed. The truth was he was terrified. The boogeyman had never bitten him before. Grabbed him, sure. Growled at him. Scared him. But bit? That was new. The boogeyman was getting worse and worse, and there wasn't anything Henry could do about it. You could get a nightlight, Matthew suggested. A nightlight? Henry asked. Yeah, a nightlight, Matthew nodded sagely. The boogeyman doesn't like light. If you had a nightlight, maybe he wouldn't come. When Mom got home, Henry asked if he could have a nightlight. Begged, really. Dad overheard the conversation while he was getting another beer. He laughed and called Henry a bad word that meant cat. Dad used that word a lot. He must really hate cats. It was his favorite insult. After that, Mom told Henry he wasn't getting a nightlight. Henry tried to compromise by leaving the light on in his room. Dad noticed and slapped him silly, screaming at Henry about power bills and how no son of his should be such a cat. Henry ended up laying in the dark, sniffling as quietly as he could. Henry woke to a large hand grabbing his leg. He cried out. The hand yanked him off the bed. Henry found himself on the floor. The hand let go. Henry scrabbled away and turned to look. He saw a dark shape under his bed. A dark shape and a pair of red glowing eyes. The creature's hand came out from under the bed again. Henry scooted further backward, but the hand wasn't reaching for him. The hand was pale yellow. It was wide and long and way too big for the spindly arm it was attached to. It was big enough to wrap around Henry's whole chest. Long fingers like spider legs ended in wicked black claws. The hand came down on the carpet a few feet away from Henry's foot. Another hand followed. The monster pulled itself out from under the bed. It was big, even bigger than Dad, and just as terrifying. The boogeyman rose up. It was tall and skinny. Its hands and head were too big for its body. The head was wide and yellow, with a hanging jaw full of sharp teeth. Its eyes glowed red. A huge mass of greasy black hair sprouted from the back of its head, tumbling down its back in a gross, tangled mess. The boogeyman loomed over Henry. A long tongue lashed out, sliding along its slavering jaw. Its eyes burned into the boy. One enormous hand reached out. The boogeyman's voice was low and deep and sinister. It spoke a single word. Soon. Henry screamed. He scrambled back again, then got up and bolted out of his bedroom. Henry did not run for his parents. He knew better. Instead, he slammed the door of his room shut. He ran for the living room. Henry nearly ran out of the apartment and into the night, but he decided it was more important to see if the boogeyman was following him first. Henry hid behind his dad's recliner in the living room. From there, he still had a good view of the hallway that led to his bedroom. The bedroom door did not open. Henry watched it for a long time. He listened, but he heard nothing. If his parents had heard Henry scream, they decided not to do anything about it. They probably hadn't heard him. Henry's mom had woken up the first few times the boogeyman had come, but after a few nights she decided it wasn't worth worrying about. Henry had accidentally woken his dad up exactly once. He dearly hoped it would never happen again. His mom found him in the morning. He'd fallen asleep on the floor behind his dad's chair. She had not been happy. Henry's insistence that the boogeyman had attacked him made her even less happy. The only saving grace was that Dad was still asleep. Mom never said it out loud, but Henry was sure she was just as afraid of him as the boy was. Mom made Henry take a bath, then kicked him out of the house. Henry wandered around outside for a while, but it was too cold to stay out for long. Henry had a coat and hat and gloves, but that only went so far when it was 10 degrees below zero. It had barely been an hour before Henry had walked back into the building. He found himself sitting in the hall by Matthew's door. It would be a few hours before his friend came out to play. Sitting there was boring. Henry hated Sundays. It was almost enough to make him miss school. School was boring, but it wasn't as boring as this. Henry wondered if he could get away with sneaking back into his apartment. Play in his room, maybe. He might get away with it if he was quiet enough. No, Dad could wake up at any moment. The man was always scary, but he was at his worst in the mornings. It would take him a few hours to drink away his hangover. That was why Mom always sent him out to play. Letting Dad see him was a very bad idea. The longer he sat, the more Henry thought about the nightlight. Why couldn't he have one? Was it really too much to ask? Why would having a nightlight make him a cat? His parents didn't believe in the boogeyman. They didn't believe Henry. They never did. And why should they? He was just a stupid kid. A little shit. He didn't know why his being around had ruined his parents' lives, but it definitely had. He should count himself lucky that they hadn't thrown him away yet. Maybe he should run away again? Henry thought about it a lot, but he'd only tried it once. The police had found him 2 days later and dragged him home. Mom had been really mad. Usually it was only Dad that hit him. The bigger problem was the boogeyman. After Henry ran away, the boogeyman had gotten worse. A lot worse. It hadn't settled for scaring Henry after that. It had started hurting the boy. Would a nightlight really keep the boogeyman away? Matthew thought it would, but what did he know? He'd never seen the boogeyman. Then again, Matthew had a phone. He could use the Google whenever he wanted. Maybe he knew stuff. Henry didn't think Mom would let him get away with sleeping in the living room again. She wouldn't let him block off the space under his bed either. Doing that hadn't helped anyway. The boogeyman had just come out of his closet. Henry had tried all sorts of things. He tried sleeping with the lights on, but his parents made him turn them off at bedtime, or turned it off themselves if he pretended to forget. Henry needed a nightlight. It was his only chance. Couldn't Mom see that? Didn't she care if the monster ate Henry? Henry sighed. Maybe she didn't. Maybe getting eaten was the best thing he could do for her. Henry could ask her again when she got off work. He knew better than to ask Dad. Henry never asked Dad for anything. But Mom? He might talk her into it if he wheedled enough. Or he might not. Mom gave in sometimes, but not a lot. He couldn't count on her to get him a nightlight. Maybe he could get a nightlight himself. Henry perked up. Could he do that? Maybe. He didn't have any money, but he'd stolen a toy before when he was shopping with Mom. It hadn't been that hard. Screw it. Henry didn't feel like sitting quietly in a stuffy hallway anyway. Decision made, Henry marched off. He walked 12 blocks in the blistering cold before he started to have second thoughts. His face was freezing. Henry had never walked to the store before. He wasn't sure he could find it. What if someone noticed him walking by himself and called the police? Or his mom? What if he got lost? What if there weren't any nightlights at the store? It took an hour, but Henry did eventually find the store. He was feeling jittery, but he made himself straighten his shoulders as he walked in, confident. He needed to look confident. He needed to move fast, too. Kids didn't usually wander around the store without their parents. He didn't want some employee to take notice. It took a few minutes to find the nightlights. Henry stole a look around. He had the aisle to himself. Henry tucked the nightlight into his coat, trying to look casual. Should he wander down the toy section? Maybe look like a regular shopper? No, bad idea. Henry had stolen stuff in his coat. The longer he was in the store, the bigger the chances that someone would notice. The boy made for the exit. An old lady in a blue vest noticed Henry. A worker lady. She frowned with suspicion, then started to walk closer. Henry walked faster. "Hey," the old lady called. She picked up the pace. "Excuse me, young man." Henry froze. He'd been caught. The old lady knew he was a stealer. No. Henry couldn't get caught. He needed his nightlight. He had to get away. Henry did the only thing he could think of. He yelled, "Stranger danger!" Then he booked it. Henry ran away from the old lady. He saw a teenager in a blue vest standing by the door. The door guard locked eyes on the boy. Henry pointed behind him and yelled, "Stranger danger!" again. The guard frowned, looking behind the kid. The moment of confusion was enough for Henry to race past him. Henry got to the door and kept running. He slowed to a walk 3 blocks later, panting. Holy crap, that was close. A grin stole its way across the boy's face. Holy crap, he did it. Henry got himself a nightlight. Everything was going to be okay. Henry floated home on a cloud of victory. He didn't even get lost. He was so happy he barely noticed the cold. He did it. He couldn't wait to tell Matthew. On second thought, maybe he'd better not tell Matthew. Matthew was a blabbermouth. He'd tell his mom, then his mom would tell Henry's mom. That would not end well. That night, Henry waited until his parents went to bed. It was a scary, tense wait. The boogeyman didn't usually come out while his parents were up, but that didn't mean he wouldn't. When he finally heard their bedroom door closed, he pulled the nightlight out from under his pillow and rushed to plug it in. Light. Light filled his room. Henry's room was a clean place. Clean clothes in the dresser, dirty clothes in the basket. His toys were in the toy bin. He had a small bed with a blue bedspread covered in race cars. There was still blood on his sheets from the boogeyman's bite, but the bedspread covered it up. The faint yellow glare of a streetlight filtered in through a set of curtains, but it hadn't been bright enough to stop the boogeyman. Maybe this would be. Henry hid under his covers. He waited. The boogeyman never came. Fear gave way to sleepiness. Henry drifted off. He woke to the sound of pounding on his door. His mom's voice called, "Henry, time to get up." The next 4 days were glorious. No boogeyman. Plus, he was at school, so he got lunch. Henry usually got dinner as long as he was good, but he didn't eat other than that. Henry's mood was so good, he didn't even beat anyone up. It couldn't last, of course. On the 5th day, Henry forgot to hide the nightlight when he woke up. His mom found it. She demanded to know where it came from. Dad woke up during the commotion. It was a bad, bad morning. "Your dad broke the nightlight?" Matthew stared at Henry in wide-eyed horror as the boy finished the story. "Yeah," Henry nodded gravely. "He broke it and threw it into the garbage. Said it was for cats." "Oh, man." Matthew shook his head. "Do you think you can get another one?" "No." Henry shook his head. "It's Mom's day off. I can't sneak back to the store." "Oh, man," his friend repeated. He frowned. "Have you tried being good?" Now it was Henry's turn to frown. "Being good?" "Yeah, being good," said Matthew. "You know, the boogeyman goes after bad kids. If you're good, maybe he won't come." Henry resisted the urge to punch his friend. "I just got caught stealing, Matthew. It's too late to be good now." A thrill of fear shot up Henry's legs. The boogeyman was coming. "Oh, yeah," Matthew sighed. "It's too bad your parents can't help. I bet your dad could beat up the boogeyman." "Yeah," Henry's dad was the scariest man alive. If anyone could beat up the boogeyman, it would be him. He shook his head again. "Grown-ups never help." "It'll be all right, Henry." Matthew patted him on the shoulder. "Someday you'll be a grown-up, and you can beat up the boogeyman yourself." Beat up the boogeyman himself? The word struck Henry like a bolt of lightning. Beat up the boogeyman. Yeah. Henry couldn't actually beat up the boogeyman. The boogeyman was too big, too strong. But that was okay. Henry didn't have to beat it up. He didn't have to fight the boogeyman at all. He just had to find a way to kill it. Henry spent the next 5 minutes thinking up a plan. He spent the rest of the day worrying about it. He made his move while Mom was making dinner. Henry peeked out from his room. Dad was on the recliner. He was drunk. He was shouting at the TV. Henry walked quietly into the hallway. He resisted the urge to sneak, stepping lightly past the bathroom door. He allowed himself one furtive glance back as he reached his parents' room. Dad was still watching TV. Henry opened the door as quietly as he could. He ducked inside and went straight for Dad's dresser. The gun was in the top drawer. It was an old revolver. It looked like something out of a cowboy movie, but shorter. Henry tucked it into the back of his pants and snuck out. He didn't risk closing the door all the way. Henry used the bathroom. His dad glanced up when the boy walked back into the room. The man glowered for a moment, then went back to watching TV. Henry put the pistol under his pillow and went back to playing quietly. The boogeyman came an hour after Henry's parents went to bed. Henry heard it before he saw it, the soft scrape of flesh rubbing across the carpet. The boogeyman rose up, looming over the boy in his bed. Red eyes stared down at Henry with evil anticipation. Henry pulled the pistol out from under his pillow. He spent half the evening trying to come up with a cool one-liner, but when the moment came, he had nothing to say. Henry swallowed his fear. He pointed the gun at the monster. He cocked the hammer back. He pulled the trigger. Nothing happened. The boogeyman laughed. It was a low, sinister sound. It raised one oversized hand and wagged a finger back and forth. Naughty, naughty, it told him. The safety. Henry had forgotten about the safety. He fumbled for it, felt the click. He pulled the trigger again. Guns in real life were a lot louder than they were on TV. The pistol bucked in Henry's hand. The shot took the boogeyman in the chest. Its eyes went wide. Die, boogeyman! Henry shouted. He shot it again. The boogeyman staggered back, black blood leaking from the holes in its chest. Footsteps. Henry heard heavy feet pounding down the hallway. The boogeyman glanced at the door to Henry's bedroom. Dad. Dad was coming. He must have heard the gun. Fear and excitement warred within the boy. Dad was here. On the one hand, Henry was about to be in a whole lot of trouble. On the other, Dad was about to see the boogeyman for himself. The two scariest things in Henry's life were about to meet. He didn't think they would be friends. The handle turned. The door didn't open. Henry, you little shit, the voice thundered. Open this goddamn door. Henry's door did not have a lock. There was no reason Dad should have trouble opening it. Unless... The boogeyman turned back to Henry. Its eyes glowed brighter. It smiled. It must be using magic or something to keep Dad out. Crap. Henry shot it again. He was still scared, but the fear was being buried under an icy calm. Dad couldn't help? Fine. Henry didn't need him anyway. He'd kill the boogeyman all by himself. Open the door, you little shit! Something slammed into the door with a heavy thud. A stream of bad words and terrible threats followed. There were 3 holes in the boogeyman's chest now. It still wasn't dead. Henry shot it in the head next. He was trying to get it in the eye, but the bullet took the creature in the cheek. A second shot got it in the forehead. The boogeyman did not die. Dad! Henry called. Dad, help! It's the boogeyman! He fired his last bullet. Another kick split the bedroom door. The boogeyman gave a low chuckle. It reached a hand slowly towards the boy. Such a naughty boy. How delicious. Henry threw the pistol at it. The boogeyman blinked when the gun hit it in the face. Henry lunged off the bed. He ran for the door and pulled on the doorknob. It was his only hope. His dad was still screaming. He could hear his mom yelling, too. Something grabbed Henry's leg and yanked him off his feet. He screamed, hollering for help at the top of his lungs. A mighty kick broke the door into pieces. Henry saw the furious face of his father. His mom was behind him. Her face was as white as a sheet. They were so close. So close. Henry reached for his dad. Dad! Dad, help! Help me! He felt himself slide across the carpet as the boogeyman pulled him away. Don't let him take me! Don't let... It was too late. The boogeyman disappeared under the bed. It took Henry with him.